In the spotlight tonight, after being proven completely wrong about the president's birth certificate, Donald Trump today emphasized another line of attack. This time, as we mentioned earlier, he's going after the president's academic record and his intellectual accomplishments. Joining me now, the definitive biographer of Barack Obama, David Remnick, editor of The New Yorker and author of The Bridge, The Life and Rise of Barack Obama. Thanks for joining me tonight, David.
My pleasure.
I want you to listen to something Donald Trump said in New Hampshire today.
Also with pleasure.
The word is, according to what I've read, that he was a terrible student when he went to Occidental. He then gets to Columbia. He then gets to Harvard. I heard at Columbia wasn't a very good student. He then gets to Harvard. How do you get into Harvard if you're not a good student?
Now, Donald says this is according to what he has read. I have read your book, and I did not read that in your book.
You didn't.
Clear this up for us.
Well, what can I say after all? I mean, we need to call this by its proper name. We need to call this by its proper name. This is race baiting. This is manipulative in the extreme. While the world burns, while we have all kinds of problems in this country, Barack Obama is being slandered by the likes of Donald Trump, who one would have thought would know better. So we've gone from the birther issue, where we already had documentation, by the way. It's not just today was the first time there was a document. And out of sheer frustration, the White House released a second document. This seems to have satisfied Mr. Trump temporarily. He called himself very proud of himself about this. I can't see why he's proud of himself. It's hate-mongering. So now on to the next thing. He was a terrible student, etc. He was not a terrible student. He was a pretty good student at Occidental. He transferred to Columbia. He was an even better student. And he got into Harvard Law School. No mean trick. And Barack Obama himself has discussed the fact that affirmative action may have played some role in getting into Harvard Law. And at Harvard Law, he did brilliantly well. In fact, he got the highest prize that you can get at Harvard Law. He became the president of the Harvard Law Review. And by every description in my reporting, something that Donald Trump doesn't bother to do, either read or do his own reporting, he was terrific at it. As both an editor, as a conciliator, as a student in the classroom. Lawrence Tribe, probably the foremost constitutional law professor in this country, described him as unprecedentedly brilliant, the best research assistant he's ever had. But Donald Trump, look, Donald Trump is an overprivileged buffoon who is not out to run for president, but to raise his ratings, to attract attention. And really, you can't say anything bad about him that hasn't been said about him for the last 30 years. He's immune to insult and jokes and remarks about his hair and all the rest. What else is there to say? Yeah, he wants attention, and he got it.
And he's trafficking in an area where he believes all he has to do is say, how did this guy get into Harvard? And you cut to the picture of the black man. And he doesn't have to say anything more.
The tragedy is that he's right. Look, there are many myths about Barack Obama, and you can just keep skipping from one stone to another. For example, there are people out there that believe, and this has been repeated on Rush Limbaugh and elsewhere, there are people that believe that Barack Obama was incapable of writing the first book that he did as a young man, quite a good book, and then in fact it was written by a ghostwriter named Bill Ayers. So this touches on all things. This has a historical precedent in this country. Frederick Douglass was not able to publish his own autobiography without affixing to it a letter from the great abolitionist William Lloyd Garrison, as it were vouchsafing Frederick Douglass's literacy. Every edition you get of Frederick Douglass's autobiography has this letter from William Lloyd Garrison telling the white audiences, and amazingly enough, this black guy was not only literate, but literate enough to write a masterpiece, because it couldn't be believed. 2 centuries later, we have this same kind of atmosphere in which the authenticity and the biography and the life of a man, whatever you may think of him politically, is in doubt. Why? The reason is very simple. For political battle. Because it's not enough to battle health care or all the various issues that Obama is. You have to undermine his credibility and his legitimacy as a human being. And what's the most radical thing about Barack Obama? Not his policies. The fact that he is a black man, the first African-American elected to the presidency, sitting in the Oval Office. So how do you go about smearing him? Well, we've been watching this now for 3 years.
It seems to me that this academic and intellectual challenge to Obama that Trump wants to present rhetorically is a much broader challenge. It is saying, that black student you met at Princeton, how did she get there? How did any of these people get here? What are they doing here? When he seems to be saying, you know, my rich white friends have kids who aren't getting into Harvard, and these people are. There must be something wrong.
Yes, one weeps.
Yeah. David Rudnick, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me.